According to the CDC, the world of mental health includes our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. It affects how we think and how we act and how we feel. But it also determines how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and how we make healthy decisions. Mental health is so important at all stages of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. So on this episode of Your Best Life, we have a mental health counselor who is going to walk us through some basic but very important questions when it comes to mental health. So stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of Your Best Life. I'm your host and healthy living correspondent, Beth Schomp. When it comes to living our best life, physical health and emotional health or mental health, well, they go hand in hand. They are equally important. In fact, often one impacts the other. For example, if you have someone and they've been clinically diagnosed with depression, then their risk for diabetes and heart disease goes up. On the flip side, you might have someone who has a lengthy illness, and in that case, it's not unusual to find that they are depressed. So they're very, very connected. That said, the world of mental health, or mental wellness, as I like to call it, it's a fuzzy one. It's one that kind of scares people a little bit, I think. So I thought it would be really a good idea to invite a mental health therapist on our show so that we can ask some fundamental questions, and she can help us explore this very important component to our overall health. So let me introduce to you Marni Wonderly. Marni is a mental health therapist. So Marni, thank you for joining our show today.
Thank you for having me, Beth.
Absolutely. Let's start with just getting to know Marni a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Marni and your credentials and why you ended up going into the field of mental health.
Okay, great. Well, mental health, like you said, is very important. And I think I went into it and at a young age, we'll just say. I can remember being in high school and being a peer counselor and just always enjoying being in the helping field. Unfortunately, you can't jump right into it out of high school. So I was a school counselor for quite some time, and then always thought that's what I would do. And kind of towards well into it, I felt like I really was missing that counseling piece, and I had always wanted private practice. So I went into private practice in the evenings and then realized that's just where my heart was. And so had a life change. It's been for the better, and been doing this full time just for a couple of months. Been doing it for 3 years overall, but full time for 4 months now. And on top of that, I'm a wife and a mom to 2 teenagers. I have a 14-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy. So they keep me busy.
You could probably come up with some really good mental wellness jokes just on that right there.
Yes, some stories and yes.
Well, we're so thrilled to have you here. So let's start off with my first question. I have seen over the last 10 to 12 years, a big surge in what we call life coaches. Why don't we start with what's the difference between a mental health therapist or a therapist and a life coach? What's the difference?
I think the biggest difference is that it's certification and licensure. And be honest, I don't know everything about life coach. My basic understanding is that there are some schools out there, you go for so long, you get certified, you do some face-to-face hours, and you can hang your shingle, be a life coach. To be a licensed mental health therapist, you not only have to have the schooling, you have to have so many hours of face-to-face, so many hours of supervision. And then there's also quite an intense test that you have to take. And I'm sure life coaches as well. It just seems that there's more schooling for a therapist and more parameters, so to speak, than a life coach. Not to insult anybody, but I feel like there's this thought out there that anybody can be a life coach. I give advice to people if I'm a life coach, and a therapist, you're really diving a little bit more in, looking at, past and behaviors, and there's more to it.
There absolutely is. And that's why I started off our session today with that question, because, mental health, it's such an important, as I said in the intro, it's very important to our overall health. And so if someone is in need of therapy, I believe they really need to find the right mental health therapist, which we'll come back to that. But let's start with the next question, or go to the next question, which is, let's talk about some of the different reasons why someone would need a therapist.
Wow. So there's lots of different avenues that people get, to therapy. Some it's a recommendation, some by a primary care physician. Sometimes it's a psychiatrist that recommends it. Sometimes it's a friend or a spouse that says, I think you need to go talk to somebody. And I can speak for myself, when people come into therapy, we talk about all the reasons that people come. Some people come just because they need somebody outside that can listen to them. Mm-hmm. Someone who, just can help them sort out everyday life. They notice there's a change, something's going on, they're having difficulty handling it. They need to get through, maybe a specific problem, or sometimes for teens, it's specific to a friendship issue, handling high school, and so on. Some people come in and they've been harboring, or stuffing, as I call it, these things that have happened to them. They may have had multiple traumas, and they're just noticing that they're not focusing like they used to. They're not working like they used to. And that's really the key. Like, when you notice there's a change in you and it's not comfortable anymore, one of the first stops is, I think, to come and talk to somebody. Now, sometimes, especially with children and teens, they come in because they want to vent, so to speak. They've got so much going on. They don't want to talk to mom and dad because they feel like they're too busy to hear me. They don't feel like there's anybody at school. They talk to their friends, but sometimes they don't feel the friends are listening. So they want somebody who they know something's up with them, but no one's listening to them, kind of thing.
They need that person that is A, impartial, B, will hear them, and C, that they can trust.
Right. That's a big one.
I think that's really, really important. And I think in today's world, that's becoming more of a rising concern. It's a rising need. So you kind of answered my next question, which is, how do you know if you need therapy? And you said if you can really sense there's something has changed and something is different, and you're not comfortable with that. I think that's a really good one. But I think what you started off saying is also good, in terms of just having that third party, or that outside party, that's going to be impartial. This is kind of a silly example, but it just came on today. There's a movie, the Thomas Crown Affair, and there's a couple of different versions. This is the one with Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo in it. And he has a therapist, and, he's so wealthy and so together and has this amazing life. And yet he goes to this therapist, and that's Faye Dunaway. She just sits there like this, and she challenges his thinking. She challenges him, and he's not there because he has a problem. He's there because he trusts her, and I just found that was really interesting, that I saw that today when we were going to be doing our filming. So I thought that was cute. So now, we've talked about this before, but I really think it's important our audience hears this. How old are people when they start coming to therapy? Because that movie, he's in his 40s or so. But when do you find, start coming to therapy?
Well, really all ages. I mean, being in schools at different levels, I've seen elementary students come and all the way on up. And I think I mentioned to you, Beth, right now, my youngest client is 6 and my oldest client is 71. And I have everything, I'm right now, and it kind of goes in seasons. I'm heavy on the teens because, just people started high school that had never been to high school. Some have even, believe it or not, gone into school. They've been online school still, through pandemic and things like that, and they're struggling with being in the building. So it's those ages and everything in between. I think one of my colleagues I saw the other day, she has somebody who's 94. So you're never too old and you're never too young.
Sure. Absolutely. A broken family I've seen personally. I have, what's the word I'm looking for? Mentored children and teens, but I have been privy to situations where it's been obvious, and I've guided them in terms of, because of the break in the family or whatever the case may be, the children need therapy, the family needs therapy. So children, absolutely, but teens today, with suicide being such at, I would assume, some pretty high rates nowadays. I think that's, and social media and COVID and all these different factors that can impact mental health. Yes, I can see that. But yes, you're right. You're never too old as well as never too young. Hi, sorry for interrupting the show. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know about one of my passions other than hosting this show. I belong to an exclusive wellness shopping club, and I have done so for over 20 years. I trust them with my family's health and my health. This club provides US-made products that are safe, affordable, focusing on your health and household and beauty. Things that we use every single day. Anyway, I'll let you get back to the show, but if you have any questions about joining, you want any information at all, I provided info below. Let's talk about what's the difference between a therapist, a psychologist, and a psychiatrist.
Okay. Well, typically the therapist is the person who conducts the therapy. They have background on different theories, thinking, behavior purposes. If you think in terms of just face-to-face and talking, or using expressive therapies such as art and sand and, they're all different modalities. A psychologist, many times, not always, a psychologist can move into kind of the therapy lane, if you will, but psychologists are often, their training is more in testing. So when, I want to have my child, evaluated for a learning disability, evaluated for some other type of mental health issue, a psychologist is the person, usually clinical psychologist is the person who can do that. And it's mostly testing. Psychologist usually equates to some kind of formal testing, a formal report that gives a formal diagnosis. Now,
so if I personally, or if my child, I felt, I think they may be struggling with depression, would the psychologist be the first step, or would it be? I know you're going to talk about psychiatrists, but what would be the first step for that person?
You can kind of go either way, because as therapists, we do have some tools like that. We are able to give a diagnosis, but it's not as clinically driven as if you went to a psychologist. They are going to evaluate specifically for, looking at what's going on.
Okay.
It's just, I guess the best way I could say it is just, it's very, very formal. It's not, there's a relationship form, but it's kind of, you're going to see that person once, maybe twice, depending on how long the testing takes. And then a therapist, you're going to have an ongoing relationship.
It probably feels very doctor-patient at that stage versus my trusted person that I can just unload with.
Right.
Okay, and then let's go on to psychiatrists. What's the difference there?
So the psychiatrist is the person who can prescribe the medication. A licensed mental health counselor, we can make diagnoses, but we can't write prescriptions. So many times I have a psychiatric practice that I refer clients to, when I feel like, and I have an in-depth conversation with the client, that medication may take the edge off of things. For example, let's say that a client comes in and is just extremely anxious, has a lot of intrusive thoughts and just can't focus. Okay. It may have a diagnosis of anxiety, and sometimes that anxiety clouds your mind. Like you just can't think straight. I look at it like you can't see the menu.
Sure.
So a psychiatrist will be able to not only formally diagnose again, but connect you with the correct medication so that you can see the menu. But many times it is important to have a psychiatrist and a therapist. I know it sounds like, oh, why do I need all these people? But the psychiatrist is an MD or a nurse practitioner, and they monitor that medication piece. And then the therapist is where you go and you're able to get those strategies, those things that you work on each week. And, when you're able to see the menu clearly, then you're able to go to therapy and kind of pick from the menu what's working for you.
So the psychiatrist is the one versus the therapist and the psychologist, which is the one that prescribes medication. A psychologist does not, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about different types of therapy, because you said something earlier that I thought, oh, I want to come back to that. You said art and sand. So let's talk about different types of therapy.
So there is kind of the general talk therapy that we all think of, that what we see on TV. And, I think I had mentioned to you also, I had a teen that came in one time and just first session, he lied down on the couch. And I was kind of puzzled, and he thought that's what you do. You go to the therapist and you lie down on the couch. And now, while I'm very laid back with my clients and I'm like, you want to lay down, you want to take off your shoes, get comfortable. But so we think of it as talk therapy is what you hear a lot of. And there's different modalities in there. There's cognitive behavior, there's dialectical behavior therapy, where a lot of it is looking at the behavior and trying to make changes about how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and how you're acting. Now, with children especially, and believe it or not, even the teens, sometimes you get ones that don't want to talk, or they give one word answer. And that's where I kind of bring in some of those expressive therapies that I was talking about. Now, I'm not certified in those things, but you can use little bits and pieces here and there. You can think of play therapy as it's, playing with dolls, a dollhouse. Sometimes I use games with the client. I've had serious Uno games, but had serious conversations over those Uno games.
Yeah, I can see those as vehicles to get people to open up. And that's ultimately what you're striving to do.
Exactly.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so this is an important question. I think this is something that so many people are wanting to know. What does an actual therapy session look like? I'm sure it's different for everybody, but I think sometimes people might hold them back for fear of, I don't know what to expect. So let's talk about what somebody could expect in a therapy session.
So usually it's a 50-minute, what they say, a 50-minute hour. So it's not full 60 minutes. And it's really just either talking or playing that game, or many times the very first session for myself and my colleagues is like a get to know you. The way that I always start is, so I'm going to tell you a little about me, very much like what I did in the beginning. And then my question is always, so what led you to come into therapy? And I mean, I've gotten every answer under the sun, from my mom is making me towards I just can't stop crying. And it's just talking through those things. And as you are working together, it's all about forming a relationship, really.
True.
And that is paramount. Now, some of us, you can't see it in my office today, but some of us I always call it mood lighting. I don't usually have the bright lights on. And sometimes I'll even ask clients, I'll say, do you want the bright lights or do you want the mood lighting today? In fact, I had a client earlier today who said, oh, I need the mood lighting because it's been a week already. I know it's only Wednesday. But, so, and it all comes back to comfort, and no one's or I should say, no one should be, a therapist shouldn't be doing anything crazy and out of the ordinary. It should be really just a get to know you, forming a relationship and forming that trust so that you can get to the issues that brought you in.
Sure. So our final question is this. If I were to feel that, you know what, I could benefit by meeting with a mental health therapist, what would I want to look for in a mental health therapist?
Well, you can do a couple of things. There is a directory that's called Psychology Today. Mm-hmm. And you can put in where you're located and they'll give you everybody. And just being honest, I think probably because I have 2 teens, they're going to look at pictures and do you have a picture or not? What does the picture look like? Does the picture look like somebody I would want to talk to?
Right.
We're all very Google-verse these days. So you could put in, just basically therapy in my area.
Yeah, therapist near me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I would say, and I always encourage people, even when they come to meet me face to face or, via Zoom, is that if in that first meeting, if you have, just some weird vibes, you're not comfortable, you don't like it, whatever it may be, you don't have to return, but sometimes you have to go through a few people until you find that person that you can be comfortable with. And I'm always a little bit on the blunt side and real with people. And I say, you know what? I've worked with middle schoolers. I have tough skin. If you are not comfortable today, let mom know or let me know. And I'll find somebody who might be a better fit. Sometimes you have a male client and they really wanted to have a male therapist or vice versa. And, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I feel like it's important to open that door. But if anybody out there listening, if you happen to make that therapy appointment and you sit down and you think this isn't a good fit, but I don't want to hurt their feelings. Yeah. Please do not stay in therapy just because you don't want to hurt the therapist's feelings.
That's so important. That's so important. You're giving them permission. You're giving them permission to make the decision that's best for them. Well, I know these questions are rather fundamental in the area of mental health or mental wellness, but that's where you start. You start with the fundamental questions. Especially if, you yourself, those of you who are listening, feel like, I kind of think I might need a little help and you don't know where to start. Well, why not start with finding a mental health therapist near you? But Marni, you've been so great. You've been so wonderful. I want to thank you for your time today. There may be some people that are watching this that feel like, I just feel like I want to ask her a couple of questions. Sure. What would be the best way for someone to reach out and connect with you?
So I do have a website. And the website is Hope, just HOPE, and Solutions. That's the name of my private practice. Mm-hmm. And just Hope stands for Helping Others Persevere Every Day. So hopeandsolutions.com. And there's a kind of contact me drop down menu within the website. And you can just, jot down your question or whatever it may be. Or you can also email me at Marni at hopeandsolutions.com. And Marni is MARNI at hopeandsolutions.com.
That's fantastic. So to our audience members, I want to thank you for watching today. Now, if you would do me a favor and like this video, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions at all regards to this particular topic or some other topic, feel free to email me directly at yourbestlife9@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page, and if you've not checked it out, please do so. You can find that connection on this page as well. So until next time, be happy and be healthy.